Folks, welcome to Junkyard Theory, and today's guest is none other than Jeremy Love. He is the concept artist behind flicks such as the upcoming Aquaman 2. He's also worked on Aquaman 1, Pirates of the Caribbean 5, Avatar 2, 3, which I'm really super excited for. We've been waiting more than a decade for these movies to come out, and he's worked on quite a few other movies, so he's going to talk about all of that stuff with us, hopefully today. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. Ayuban.
Ayuban. Thank you very much for inviting me on. It's awesome.
No problem, man. So, Jeremy, we've never really had any concept designers or concept artists on board the show before. So, you are essentially the first. So, I kind of want to know how does your process kind of start? But before all that, talk to us a little bit about your origin story. How'd you get into concept art?
Yeah, sure. I actually started pretty late. So I was about 30 when I started concept design, which is comparatively, to these days, kids are starting right out of school. There's just so much information out there now that they know exactly that it exists for a start. I mean, I never knew that concept art even existed. But going back, like most artists, I could kind of draw from an early age. So I thought, I'd like to be, like a sign writer or something like that. And I was born in New Zealand, so there wasn't really much exposure to Hollywood sort of stuff or anything like that. Everything I learned, I sort of read from books. But I left school. I didn't really have any direction. I didn't go to college. I decided to I got a job at a supermarket, worked there for a couple of years, and then went on what's called the Dole, which is basically just surfing every day. And then when I was about 20, I left New Zealand and went to Australia because there was a lot more opportunity. My father was over here. And so I wanted to get to know him a bit. I came over to Australia and, mucked around for a bit more, did a bit more surfing. And then I thought, well, I better pull my socks up and, get a job. I mean, I'd always kind of been working, but nothing. There was no serious sort of direction.
So have you been drawing from like a young age, or did you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an only child, so they just sort of chucked me in the room and go, here, have some crayons, and I just keep myself busy that way. And at school, I'd be, at lunchtime just drawing away.
No, the artwork that you've done, it's crazy detailed. So how long? I mean, I'm assuming this has been like a lifetime process since you started out as a kid, and then with crayons, and then eventually moving on to digital medium. What was that process like? Like, how long did it take to come to this place where you visualize an entire world that only existed before in the form of words?
Yeah, right. Well, like I said, I had no idea. So, what I was going to do. So when I got to Australia, I actually managed to pick up a job in sign writing and doing like graphic design. And I did that for about 10 years. But I was exposed to a lot of fumes and paints and things like that. That was good because I got to learn how to, mix colors, deal with clients. I was doing murals, lots of airbrushing, stuff like that. Pictures on cars, boats, and what have you. And then I went to the UK for 2 years on a working visa as a sign writer over there. And while I was over there, I was doing a little bit of work for 3D work because I wanted to become a 3D artist. So I was doing that on the side. And I was learning how to use Lightwave, which is a really ancient 3D software, which is still around, actually. It's picking up a little bit of speed now again. But I was sort of doing a little bit of work for my wife's parents' production company. They had a small production company that did TV commercials and stuff like that. But anyway, so I was doing that and signwriter during the day, and then there was this Copenhagen 3D festival. I think it was like 2003 or 2004 or something. And I went along to that, and I was hungover, and I got into this auditorium because I'd never been in Copenhagen by myself before, so I went out the night before and had a good time. And there was just no like standing room only, so I'm sitting in the middle aisle, and this guy's up there talking about concept art. I'm like, what is this concept art thing? And it was Feng Zhu. Feng Zhu is a very, very successful, well-known concept artist. He worked on Star Wars, all sorts of stuff. And he's since started his own design school, which is very successful. But anyway, this guy just blew me away. And I was like, all right, forget all that 3D stuff. I bought myself a Wacom tablet, and I studied and studied. And like I'd get home from signwriting and just be out till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. And I started to sort of pick up a few small clients from there. And my work was barely good enough to get paid work. It was really terrible. I mean, drawing 2D is one thing, and I have a complete traditional background. But the process from going to 2D to digital was pretty hard, actually. It was like sort of starting from scratch again. But I practiced, and when we came back to Australia, I actually went for a job at Chrome Studios, which is a game studio in Brisbane. And a guy named Stu McKenzie, he's an absolute legend, took a chance on me, and I thought I was absolutely useless, but he obviously saw something in me. And yeah, I've just been working in games and film ever since. So I worked at Chrome Studios for about 5 years. We worked on, Star Wars games and all sorts of stuff. Hellboy, which I'm a big fan of, as you probably see. And a mate of mine who I was working with at the time, Min Yum, and he's a fantastic artist. And he was working on a film called, what was it called? Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And he said, look, they're after artists here. Do you want to give it a go? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'd love to work in film. So I went and met with the supervising art director, Ian Gracie, and he gave me the job. So we just sort of started from there. And I was like super nervous because I'm a bit of an introvert. So I thought, oh my God, I'm such an imposter. Like everyone's so good and I'm complete crap. So I just worked really, really, really hard. And I just kept on getting more and more work, and it just went from there.
Been climbing the ladder ever since.
Slowly but surely. Still doubt myself every day.
I guess that's part of being an artist, right? Yeah, definitely. About the process, like how you start designing something. Kind of walk me, through how you start. Does the director talk to you and like explain to you what he or she wants, or do you take a look at the script and come up with your own version, or is there like a separate hierarchy through which directions come to you? How does that work?
There is a bit of a hierarchy, but that can change. It sort of differs from project to project, the size of the project, the type. But typically, I'll get contacted by either a supervising art director or a production designer, and the design process starts with hopefully reading the script. Not always. Sometimes we just like get given a printed copy of the script. It's like, oh, great. Other times no one gets the script, like on Avatar. Like no one got the script. We had no idea what was going on, apart from the supervising art director there. When he was in LA, he was taken into a room where he was like 20 minutes with the script to read it, and then he sort of gave us the plot points, so we sort of had a vague idea what was going on. And then you sort of fill in the gaps with what was left, all the concept art on the walls and stuff. So okay, I kind of get what's going But yeah, so read the script, or just get given an excerpt from the production designer, and the production designer usually has a pretty good idea of where they want to take the direction, of the visual style. And they usually get they've got like assistants that will find reference for them. So there's a package sent of reference, and then you get the brief, bit of a chat, and it's like, go for it. Sometimes the production designer will have a very specific idea. Other times it's quite vague and you're allowed complete freedom, which I love. But yeah, and it starts with quick, rough thumbnails or gestural images, mood pieces, which is hopefully like very quick. Like everything in film has to be done quite quickly, unless like they don't want you to be polishing up something that is going to be completely wrong. It's just absolute waste of time. So it's always a race against the clock, which I need to kick up the bum every now and then, so that's good. I even set timers sometimes to help me stick to it, but yeah, that's pretty much how the production, the process starts with concept, I think.
Do you guys use any references, or do you do your own research when it comes to concept design, or is that done by somebody else?
Yeah, so the reference, sometimes they have what's called a lookbook, and that usually that's being put together right from very, very early stages. They'll get some concept artists together, or it can be completely reference images, stuff like that. Even shots from other films, anything that sort of gives you the feel of how the moods there's going to be on those notes that they want to hit. So that's always good if they have that. But otherwise, it's really just a quick brief and some reference images. Like I'm thinking of having, this building here. There's a battlefield here, and this is the kind of mood sky we want. You read the excerpt in the script, and then just go for it. And I kind of feel like, I've learned that my job is more about giving them what they don't want, if that makes any sense. Like 90% of my job is giving the director what they don't want to see, because it's sort of narrowing things down. And to start off with, that was quite stressful, because I was like, man, they're hating all my stuff. Like everything I'm doing is just getting knocked back, or they're not even saying anything. But then you realize that that's a really valuable thing to have.
Is it like the process of like you're in the process of elimination, like figuring out what they don't want and then getting down to what it is, like pinpointing the exact thing?
Yeah, exactly. And that comes back to the speed thing, so the faster you can get through that process of what they don't want, the better. And then once you sort of start narrowing it down, sending things back and forth, and like, oh yeah, maybe change this, maybe try that. And then you can start spending a little bit more time detailing things up. So the images that I have on my folio, which, by the way, like a week after I put them up, I regret it. I don't know, it's just an artist thing. I think all artists are the same. They finish a piece and they're like, oh wow, that's cool, I like that. And then 2 weeks later or whatever, you look at it and go, what was I thinking? It's all wrong. I could do much better. But I guess that's what keeps us going. But yeah, so for every piece that's on my portfolio, there's probably about 100 images behind that, and maybe a month's worth of design process.
Do you mostly do character work or environment? Because I've seen quite a lot of environment work, on your ArtStation page, and some pieces of character art, like Jax from Mortal Kombat, which I personally loved, like the iterations that you guys went through. So, what's that dynamic like?
I would love to do more character work and vehicle work and stuff like that, but you don't get pigeonholed, but you kind of, if they see you can do something well, they go, oh, that guy can do that, so we'll just give him that. unless you really sell yourself as,
It's
say,
kind of like getting typecast, right?
it is, yeah, it is. And I'm kind of lucky where I haven't really limited myself to doing just one thing. So every now and then I'll get a little bit of everything, but mostly I get environment work. Yeah. But yeah, I'd love
I
to
was
do
on mute.
more.
No, I was on mute. I was on mute.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, some of your work, I believe, ends up in these art of or the making of movie books. So, what's that like? I mean, like you said, there's quite a lot of iterations, work that never really make it into the final, make it the final stage. So I'm assuming, some of these books do a really good job of showing you what the filmmakers went through with the concept artists on figuring out the specific look that they need or hitting that the right vibe. So getting your work finally onto a printed page in the form of like a making or an art of book, how does that feel, man? Because I collect these for the sole purpose of figuring out like what went through the filmmakers' minds, like what was their pre-production process like it's an amazing look into what went down behind the scenes.
Yeah, they are awesome, those art of books. And sadly, a lot of films which I worked on, which I would have, like Pirates of the Caribbean and Mortal Kombat and stuff. It's like, oh, where's the art book? They didn't do one. But yeah, actually with the art books, a lot of the time, the image that they choose will be not the one that you were happy with. Oh, why did they choose that one? Okay, no worries. Well, what would be really nice if they showed with those books, because it is the art of to show more of the working drawings, more of the process. Whereas concept art, when people think of concept art, they think pretty finished pictures, but it's actually more about the design process, I think. Yeah. So it would be nice to have art books that to show more of that. But yeah, it feels awesome.
You mentioned, the production designer usually knows exactly what they want on pretty much all the projects, and production design, that's an entirely different department. But how collaborative do you guys get, concept art department versus all the other departments? How closely do you guys work together?
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, there are concept artists in every department. So you've got costume, which have their own concept artists, and they're usually in another building. So you've got the art department, which has the production designer, the supervising art director, the set designers, the art directors, the runner, some researchers, and concept artists. I think that's everyone. And then you've got the set decoration, which they have their own concept artists as well, and they're usually concepting props. So anything to do with the decoration side of things. Sometimes there's a crossover. But yeah, I think so. Some projects I've been lucky enough to work in a number of different departments within the film. I think with some I've been in the props department in like a set deck, and then gone into the art department, and then gone into post production with visual effects, which is, if you can stay on a film for that long, that's amazing, because it's long term employment. You're on it for almost a year. But yeah, usually it's about. Sorry to go off topic a bit, but usually it's about sort of
No problem.
4 months. So it can be quite difficult, because you'll be on a film and it might go for 4 months, and in the meantime you're getting all these other offers from different films that you're sort of, oh, I can't do that right now, I've got this one to do, and then that film finishes and then there's nothing. So it's like feast or famine. But yeah, so if you can get on one that lasts that long, it's fantastic, and that was the case with Mortal Kombat. So yeah, I was able to work in all those different departments. The production designer is probably, and the art directors are probably the only ones that do correspond the most with the different departments. especially art directors. They're they liaise with the different departments and sort of bring back the information, and so that everything sort of is cohesive and works together. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, that did. You mentioned that you stay on board for a project for roughly like a year. I had no idea that concept artists stay that long with the project. And earlier you were telling me that you're still working on Aquaman too. So how long does that process like usually take? I thought it was just pre-production, but apparently you work in post also sometimes.
yeah, like I said, for example, let's say I got a job on a film at the pitch phase, and they like my work. This has never happened, by the way. And then I went on to pre-production, and then that sort of went for 4 to 6 months, and then I went on to post-production with visual effects, which is visual effects concept art is a lot more polished work, whereas they're sort of finessing everything. They're like, okay, well, we need to know what this effect looks like, or like Jax's arms, that was done in post. Weta Digital had done a lot of stuff before that, and this happens a lot. There'll be a huge amount of design work done, and at the very end they'll be, okay, we're going to change it, which seems like it would be a huge waste of resources and money, but to get to that final thing, that might only take a week. You do need all that the previous stuff, because it's I can't think of the word, but it does let you know what I said before, what they don't want and what they do want. But yeah, Jax's arms was super fun. Like I designed him over a week. Did all those I think I did all those preliminary drawings in a couple of days, and then I had to model them for the rest of the week. So it's really fast. But yeah, it can go for a long time if you're that lucky. Yeah.
And sorry, so go on.
No, it doesn't happen very often, and probably less now that I'm working from home. I mean, things are just changing so fast. I will say that prior to COVID, production designers in particular would feel usually very funny about having people working away from the studio. They like to have people, the long-term concept artists, they like to have everyone in the art studio, in the art department, so they can talk to them on a regular basis, walk past the screen, stop things progressing too far if it's in the wrong direction, stuff like that, so, and especially with a lot of the more seasoned production designers, they're starting to realize that, oh man, this is actually it works. It's not ideal, but it's definitely something that's viable, which is good for us.
100%. Working on Jax's arms and then Aquaman movies like this, they already have some pre-existing material. Like it's already pre-existing IP. So how much of what's done before do you refer to, and how do you take what's been done and then integrate it and hopefully make something your own, make it unique and contemporary for this particular new iteration?
Yeah, well, with Jax's arms, there's so many versions out there, isn't there? And I had a good look at them all. Some of them I really liked, some of them I thought were a bit garbage. I think every artist sort of has a version that they would like to do, and I was just lucky on this occasion that the way I wanted to do it. Also, Simon McCoy, the director on Mortal Kombat, was just so happy to see. He was there in the room. He'd come in and have a look, and he was just so happy that he had these concept artists that he could have such a quick turnaround of what he was thinking. And I was lucky that we were sort of thinking along the same lines, to have it more, a little bit more sci-fi, a little more militaristic looking, robust, and because there was supposedly these sort of magical monks that could, I don't know how it all works, but the lore, by the way, behind Mortal Kombat was so deep and so rich. So there was a lot to draw from with that, and we had a lot of information, a lot of lore there to draw from. And actually, I did some pillars. There was this, I think, in Raiden's temple, and they told the story of each race through the pillar. They walk in the scene. They walk past probably in a couple of seconds. You get a bit of a glimpse of them. But I spent probably about a month working out the backstory of all these, the lore, and designing them into these murals that went up these pillars, and they all got CNC like milled out of foam or whatever, and they looked great. But and then in a film you hardly see it, which happens a lot as well. But yeah,
which is kind of like a bummer, right? I mean, you guys spend like months working on something like that, something as deep as it, and then it gets totally cut out. And if there's no art book or like a behind the scenes, what you call maybe like a documentary or something to kind of explain the process that went into designing it, it kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like lost history. And I don't know, I prefer seeing like having that out there in some sort of tangible format, because it's a testament to what you guys worked on, right?
Yeah, for sure. And at the same time, it's just a lot of fun, and usually what ends up on the screen usually is the best of the bunch. Not always, but mostly. Yeah, but yeah, it would be nice to see more work in progress stuff for sure. And I mean, there's sites like ArtStation, which is fantastic. But like I said before, people sort of they're more gravitate towards the finished, the pretty images that, a lady holding a big sword and I don't know, that sort of stuff. So people don't really want to see these rough sketched ideas and things unless they're geeks like me.
You worked with James Wan, fellow Aussie, on multiple projects. What's it like working with somebody who ventures out into horror and comes back into like superhero and then bounces around between different genres? Like, what's that like?
James is awesome. He's just a proper Aussie. I think he's from Perth actually, but he'd come into the office and just be super psyched, like stoked. And he's always just full of energy, and I don't know where he gets it from, because I mean, I'm working with him at the moment, and it's really quite strange because this hasn't really happened before, where I'm not dealing with anyone but the director. It's just us sort of going back and forth emailing. And to begin with, I was like, didn't want to bug him, On the first couple of days, I did some concepts and then sent it through, and I wouldn't say anything. I just like, here's your concepts. Had some questions, but I don't want to bug you. And he's like, no, dude, you need to sort of be more vocal. And I was like, oh, really? I thought you'd be like super busy and I'm just a concept artist. He's like, no. So it's been really a bit of an eye-opener and really good. But yeah, he's a really, really nice guy. As are most of the people in film are so like super cool.
I guess like the guys who don't really get along with people don't get to work
too
long.
Yeah. It's a pretty small industry.
Yeah. Working on Aquaman, the first movie, and then now the second one. I know I can't needle you for too much information, and I know NDAs, all that stuff. But is there anything that you kind of build up, or build on top of what you guys already did in the first movie, concept art wise?
Oh yeah, I can't really say anything, can I? I think what I can say is that it's the first film, like, James paved the way, because when, Aquaman, the idea of it was a bit silly, and, he was riding on swordfish or whatever, or dolphins, and he had this crazy coloured suit, and he was a bit of a laughing stock. And James Wan just came in and made him a rock star, and with Jason Momoa, you can't beat that. So people are now more ready to accept what's coming next. I think they're being primed. So I think James has a bit more freedom to go a little more crazy, a little more wacky, and just really, really have fun with it. And I think that's what he's doing. It's a very cool script. A lot of the themes are the same, and that's probably all I can say. But it's going to be great.
Not gonna put you in any in any trouble asking for further info. So let's wrap that up.
Well, I really liked in the first film how James did bring his horror chops into the fore, and really with the trench scene, it was just one of my favorite scenes in the film. It's so good. So hopefully he does that again, which I'm sure he will.
That were you at any point involved with the Trench movie? Because there was like a spin-off that was being discussed, but then I think they kind of shelved it.
No, it wasn't. That would be fun though. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I really did love how he brought his his take on horror into at least like that particular scene, because he comes from a horror background, and that's pretty much what he does best. Plus, the rotating camera, Dutch tilts, and all of that. Yeah.
The rooftop scene, that's fantastic.
In addition to all of that, like working on Mortal Kombat, have you ever like stepped out of the country and gone to work on like different other projects, or has it always been in Australia? Like I know Mortal Kombat was shot there too.
There was a while there where I was, I think I went about 5 years where I hadn't actually been home for more than a couple of weeks. To Brisbane, I mean, I went from Sydney to New Zealand. I was in New Zealand for 2 years, working on the Avatar sequels, which was an amazing experience. I mean, that's next level, and the amount of money that they had, that they threw at such awesome props and stuff, was fantastic. But anyway, so went from there and then down to Adelaide, back to Sydney, back down to Adelaide. So I was all over the place. But Mortal Kombat was in Adelaide, so I was down there for a good 6 months. So,
have your concepts kind of changed anything that was in the script? Anything like you came up with? Has there been any moment where you came up with something that was like so wild that the filmmakers kind of decided, all right, you know what, it's not exactly as it's supposed to be in the screenplay, but we're going to change that because this is like pretty damn good?
I think that, I mean, I'd like to say but I don't. I think usually, as far as the script goes, that's usually pretty solid. It's pretty locked off, except, well, I mean, there are films where it's in flux, but like on, I probably can't say too much, but I was on Thor recently, and you can work on a scene for a good month, doing hundreds of iterations on stuff, and Taika, another awesome director, by the way, Taika Waititi, he was amazing, but he definitely had an idea of what he wanted, but he didn't he knew what he wanted, but we couldn't find it. So we would be just doing like so many iterations, and then and then the scene would change again, like the script would change a bit. Okay, we're not doing that scene anymore. So it definitely can change, but not in the way, like, I don't think I'm trying to think. Probably didn't really answer the question. I think more along the lines of if you design a really cool prop or something, it might change the way they shoot it possibly, but script probably not. I remember on Pirates of the Caribbean 5, was working with Nigel Phelps, who was a production designer, and he came up with this idea for this trident, the Poseidon's trident, that was kind of almost shell-like, not your typical shaped trident. I thought, oh, wow, that's really cool. He did a real quick little sketch, and then I did a page of roughs, and he was like, oh yeah, okay, we'll do that one. And then I did a final up, and like within a week they were sculpting it to get, you know, and this was like a major hero prop, and I was like, wow, that was lightning in a bottle. And he goes, I know, that hardly ever happens. But the way they used that trident in the film and the way it glowed and all that sort of stuff, I think the design definitely, what would you say? It gave them a lot more to work with when they were shooting, gave them some ideas. But as far as changing the script, not usually.
At least not yet.
Yeah. I like to think that I could do some designs that were so cool. They were like, you know what? We're just going to write a new scene for that. But no, I don't think so.
Again, at least not yet. When it comes to, like you mentioned with Jax's arms, you guys kind of integrated like a little bit of a militaristic design in there, and you know, again, with Jax's backstory and all of that, like he comes from like a military background, all of that, like it, you guys, I know y'all kind of integrate a lot of what you know, very character-centric elements into the concept art as well. And how I think what I'm trying to ask is, is there like a thought process that kind of goes into it, or do you guys kind of like, is it different every single time you approach a character? Is there like a template, or is there like, you know, is it different every time?
It's definitely different. I mean, there is a process I kind of follow, but and it's different for every artist. But usually I'm just trying to find something that looks cool, you know. And I have a certain amount of guidelines to stick within. And so if you can combine, you know, making something look cool with these guidelines, then usually you end up with that particular design. And you can do a few crazy, you know, wild cards, like a couple of concepts that might be a bit out of the wheelhouse. But usually the time is so pressing that, I mean, I'd love to be able to do that with every job. It's like, okay, well, here's what I think you want. Here's something that's maybe a little different. And here's one that I really think is cool, but you're not going to like it. But usually I don't have time to do that one. So I'm usually just trying to stick to that brief. I don't know if that's answering your question, but so with Jax's arms, like I said, there had been a lot of stuff done by Weta Digital, and I started off making small amendments to their stuff, respecting what they had done and the designs, and then it just sort of evolved from there, and the more iterations I did, it just ended up. You don't sort of, it's like the frog in the boiling water, you know, like you don't really notice it happening, but you look back and you're like, oh, wow, it's just completely different now. And that happened with that, and yeah. That answered your question.
Yeah, it did. I was thinking about aesthetics versus functionality, because you said, you know, you try to make something look good, but at the same time, yeah, you gotta kind of you know, hopefully make sure it's functional as well, in case someone's building like a prop out of like a concept design that you've done. So how do you kind of balance that out too?
Aesthetics versus functionality. That's a hard one, because it really depends on either the type of film. If it's a very fantasy type film, you can get away with a lot of, it's magic, you know. It just works. But usually, I try to make stuff at least look feasible. I think about how things work, and that it helps having a bit of a technical background and an understanding of how things work. I'm kind of mechanically minded in that way as well, which really helps. But yeah, if they have to build it, it really does help to think about the way arms bend and how armor will be positioned on the body, and you can't have a shoulder pad crashing through the neck or anything like that. But and you see these crazy concepts that people do online, and they've got all these jagged points everywhere, and you kind of got to steer away from that a little bit, because people have to wear these costumes, and they want them to be comfortable. So definitely stuff that the actors have to interact with. There's a lot more thought. They call them hero props, but there's a lot more thought that goes into them. There's budget constraints that we have to take into account as well. There's the amount of times that I've, and this happened a lot in the early days, especially on my first film, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I designed these crazy props, and they go, oh wow, awesome, let's go build this, and then they go to the props department and the fabricators, and they come back and like, this was going to cost $60,000. So there was a lot of stuff that I did in that film that just never got made. But,
so do you get kind of an idea about, all right, hey, Jeremy, this is the budget we have, so don't kind of give us anything that goes beyond that, or not?
No, I think there was a point where I was told, look, I know you like to design this crazy stuff that's like impossible to make and really expensive, so just try and resist that urge. And I think from then on, I was like, oh, okay, I really need to think about trying to make this as cheap as possible to make, and just tone it back. Like less is more, really. And also, it's not just how many parts there are, and how big it is and all that sort of stuff. It's the amount of detail, and you have to think someone has to actually sit down and craft this. And is there any unnecessary detail? Like you want to hit that point where it's readable on screen. It does the job, it follows the brief, but it's not going over top. It's going to be easy to make, or easy-ish, and not too expensive. So you can sort of hit all those marks. Like I said, there's all these constraints. It's like freedom within a box. But I really enjoy working to those constraints, like otherwise sort of looking at that white page going, well, it could be anything. So to have that is good. But you mentioned, has anyone asked me to stay within an actual budget? No, like never. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Trying to think of a good example. Actually, yeah. On Alien Covenant. Yeah, I had to do these. They had the lander and they had the Covenant ship itself, and I got given the job of doing the consoles. And this is before I was using 3D, so I was like, oh man, I've got to draw every single button and lay it all out. Now you just grab a whole bunch of kit bash models from online and bash something together. But then I mapped everything out in 2D flat, and then I warped it all to a basic structure, and then sort of raised all these little bits up and painted around them, and it was just a lot of work. Anyway, they looked at them and thought, how the hell are we going to build that? Because I just it's easy to draw but hard to make, right? But they did it, like especially the Covenant console, every single button and LED screen, they all worked. They all had something behind them. If an actor pushed any old button or flipped a switch, something would light up or change. And if you saw the back of those console boards, it's just insane how much work went into it. And I know that my name was probably mud a few times on that job. Because, oh man, why can't you just make it simpler? But that's probably a good example of going a little bit OTT. But it looked cool on the film.
100%. I mean, it's not easy taking over from somebody like I don't know how you pronounce his name, H.R. Geiger. Yeah. I mean, like I have his Necronomicon book, and I'm like, that guy was crazy. And the whole Alien franchise kind of derives its design from what he came up with in the original 1979 movie, I guess. And you guys pretty much had your work cut out for you. So, working on Alien Covenant, were there like any set guidelines that you guys gotta make sure that it kind of looks like what came before, or because I mean, it's before, it predates, it's a prequel, right, to the original Alien. So, in that sense
Yeah,
of things.
yeah. I mean, everything. So the stuff that I was doing was all mostly human made, apart from a bit of stuff that David had in his cave. But so Ron Cobb was my sort of go-to inspirational reference point for that. Ron Cobb was a concept artist who died not too long ago, unfortunately, but amazing concept artist who did all the original Alien. What would you call it? The hard surface design, a lot of the ship interiors and stuff like that. So yeah, I was using a lot of what he had done to sort of guide me through that process. Yeah.
We had Justin Raleigh on the show some time back. He and his team at Fractured Effects, they did they did like a costume version of the trench creatures, and then they realized it's not as practical. Like you can't really get what James Wan wanted through prosthetics, and then they had to kind of replace it all with CGI. So working with movies where sometimes you have practical, then you have CGI, then it's like some like a mix of the two. How does your design process facilitate both sides of the spectrum, I guess?
I think you're asking. Oh, so do you mean? Oh, I see. I see. Like, well, with Alien Covenant, I didn't really have anything to do with the alien stuff, so to speak. I mean, those guys, like Odd Studios, they did some fantastic work. And Carlos Huante, I think his name is, another concept artist, was doing a lot of the creature work, among other artists. And like I said, I was doing all the hard surface. But I went down to the prosthetics department with a couple of the other guys, and it was just phenomenal the work that they were doing. They had this. We got to see the actual suit where the guy walks around in, with the gloves that you put on and the feet, and it was all sort of hanging up, and we're playing with it, and just got to see a lot of the alien sculptures, and the process that they go through is just amazing. But I only went there once, and I didn't really have much to do with it. I would have loved to have done a lot more of that sort of thing, but unfortunately, I didn't really get to do any character stuff, not much environment stuff. And while I was in the art department with the concept artists that were doing that, I was kind of more working with set deck on that one. But in general, I think the costume designer, the concept artists that work with the costume designers, that they work through all that stuff, like doing the Aquaman suit, things like that. Someone would have to, I guess that they would model that in 3D with the CAD software or ZBrush or something like that, and 3D print all the little pieces out, and then they'd start sticking it on. And was that what you were asking? How much involvement do I have with that sort of thing? Or?
Well, yeah, with the practical elements or CGI, because films kind of like balance both departments in some way, or sometimes when you design something, do you keep in mind, all right, this is going to end up becoming like a prosthetic, or that this is going to be done in CGI, and if so, how does your design process kind of change?
Yeah, and I don't, with character stuff, I haven't had too much to deal with that, but actually things are changing now in that regard with the volume. I don't know if you've heard much about the volume, like the Mandalorian show used it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. We used it on because Taika Waititi is the director on Thor, the new Thor film, and he directed an episode of The Mandalorian, which used Jon Favreau's the volume. So we were able to, everything we did had to fit within this volume. It's a whole new way of working. So yeah, all of a sudden I'm having to think of, okay, when I'm designing an environment, I have to, like, this far up, it's going to start going off into CG. Like, they would only build a very small section of the set, and it had to be like actually I was on the project fairly early, and we didn't actually even have a proper model of the volume to use, like a 3D model. So I got given the dimensions, and I just modeled up a volume myself, and then worked within that until we got a proper model. So every set that I worked on that show with Nigel Phelps, we sort of had to sit down and nut out where the volume would go to get the best shots. How many volume stages would we need, along with the art directors too. See, a lot of art directors, well, the art directors will be given certain sets. So say if a movie has, like 20 sets in it, you'll have maybe 5 art directors, and they'll be divided up. So each art director has 5 sets each, sort of thing. And we would work a lot with them, and but yeah, it was an amazing experience. Like, I remember going down to the volume stage, and I usually I'm jumping around here. It was just such an awesome experience, and it was a hard gig, really, really hard, really tough.
But please do talk to us a little bit about that, because it's brand new tech, and it's being used amazingly in The Mandalorian. So it's nice to see it coming into more mainstream cinematic pieces as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember going down to the set and just looking at it, going, "Wow, this is incredible! This is just a game changer." And they were actually moving some things around, and it's just instant. You got the real world lighting, and the amount of actual the actual props that were in there were very minimal. And I was thinking, well, how do they sort of blend in the floor with the walls? But it just works so well. And there's very minimal sort of set dressing that needs to be done to make it work. Yeah, very, very cool. And also, it sort of changed the process of how the art department works as well. And when the art department before the volume would have to build entire sets, and they still do with some, because not every set suits the use of a volume. But the volumes are going to get bigger and bigger, I think. I forget how big they are now, but they're going to just start getting massive. Like, I think ideally at some point you'll get an entire soundstage built like a volume. But it has changed the way the art department works, because there's just so much more figuring out and working to get, because we're working at the same time with effects houses, because they having to come in a lot earlier to get these shots done. So there's a lot of toing and froing and problem solving, and it's pretty crazy. Lots of work done more up the front end as opposed to all done in post. So less to build practically, but more work to be done in the art department.
Every single guest on the show has uttered that statement. It's all about problem solving.
Yeah.
And I guess that it rings true for whatever department you're in, and what stage of production you're working at, in whatever phase. It's like you're solving problems all year round, no matter where you are, making a movie. So
that's what we paid to do. Yeah. And like I said, I used to get super stressed, like, oh man, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. Like, I have to just do all this amazing work that gets approved the first time. But it's not about that. Like, it's all about the failing. As soon as I realized that failing is the most important part of the process, it was so much easier, and just have fun with it. And it's like, okay, let's try this. Let's try this.
How did you learn to take a punch? I mean, not literally, but
you have to grow a pretty thick skin, yeah, because a lot of people will just tell you that they don't mince their words. They're not worried about hurting your feelings or anything. They'll just come straight out with it. Yeah.
And that's not easy as an artist, right? I mean, like you create something, that's your baby, and you feel protective. So hearing someone say something negative about it, like you said, you got to develop thick skin. But for you, was that like a process that took time, or was it like you realized, right? It's not that they're attacking my work. It's about getting what kind of serves the story best on screen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it did take me a little while to sort of. I mean, I had a bit of that in sign writing. I learned, the client knows what they want, and it doesn't matter how long you spend on it. They might come out and look at it, and they've had something in their head, and it might be awesome, but they sort of think, I'm not paying for that. That's not what I wanted. Luckily, that didn't happen too much, but you develop a thick skin, and I sort of had to remind myself in film that you are just an extension of the director or the production designer or art director's hand. You're basically just another tool to get to that end product. And then once I started to realize that, then you can't take it personally, because it really is just about the process. And, if you want to get precious about something, then you get precious about your personal work that you do at home. But the stuff you do on a show it's really just it's just a process. So yeah.
Do you end up owning the artwork that you do for a movie? Because some of it you upload it on your ArtStation page, or do you kind of like have to get permission for that? How does that work out?
Yeah, it's become a bit of a gray area, but typically, well, the studio owns all of the artwork. Anything you do on the show just outright belongs to the studio. And these days it's sort of become, this wasn't always the case. Usually you would definitely have to ask permission before you show any of the artwork online. But now it's become kind of the norm, where if the film's been out, I usually like to wait, like a month or something, so that a lot of people, gives a lot of people a chance to see it, so you're not putting any spoilers out there. And then just sort of slowly just put some work up. Because, it is important for artists to be able to show their work, because a lot of artists like me don't really have time to do personal artwork because you're just working all the time. So this is sort of, you can't go, if you're busy for 10 years and at the end of that you're not allowed to show any of it, that's like, well, how do you get the next job? Or, so it's sort of an extra incentive to do nice work, to do good work, because we're artists, we want to do, the next one's got to be better than the last one, and always evolving and bettering yourself. So yeah, I think it's good now that we're allowed to. Yeah, it's widely acceptable that we can put our artwork up.
It's good for us to see, for us as well, because we love seeing how, like I said, what goes on behind the scenes, what all the various iterations were, what process, what did you go through to arrive at that final design. So it's always amazing.
Well, I love it when sorry, I was going to say, I love it when studios, the ones that really see the value in the concept art, the more final stuff, and they'll use it as in their marketing campaigns. Especially Marvel, they'll drop a piece of concept art that's just mind blowing. It gets everyone excited, Like if I think it was one back when, in the early days of Marvel films, studios, when Charlie went, I can't remember the artist, but it was Thor and Loki standing off, and it was just a really basic composition, but it was really striking, and they used that in their advertising, and it just worked a treat. And I think they should definitely do more of that.
Marvel has it, nailed down, I think, on every aspect. Even their art books, like they release one for every single project, which is amazing. It's a treat, It's always a treat.
Yeah, well, Shang-Chi's coming out soon.
And you worked on that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun. Sue Chan, the production designer on that, she's really nice. Like, just such a joy to work for, and we had a great team on that. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, because we're at the 1 hour mark, and I kind of want to know if anybody's looking to get into the field of concept design, what advice would you give them?
You don't necessarily have to go to school, like I didn't, but it helps. There are certain, like when I started out, there wasn't very many. Well, there weren't. I think there was like art center and things like that. You'd have to go over to the States. But now everything's online. It's so easy just to teach yourself if you've got the drive and the passion just to put in those hours, and don't give yourself a hard time. Just take it slow and stay passionate, because burnout's a real thing. I've suffered from that a number of times where you're just so hard on yourself that it's counterproductive. So you got to keep that love for what you do, and not make it painful or a chore. That's probably my biggest piece of advice, because once you lose that joy for it, that's the worst thing ever. So yeah, and there are some really good schools. There's one here in Australia. I don't know if there are any over in Sri Lanka. But yeah, like CDW is a really good school here, and there's tons in the States. Like they seem to be popping up everywhere. And the schools are a lot of them are online, and they're run by successful concept artists that have been working in this industry for years. So yeah, it's definitely doable.
100%. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining, and I'm personally looking forward to seeing some of your art for Shang-Chi and Thor: Love and Thunder ending up in an art of book, which it's like I said, one of my pastimes is collecting those. So really looking forward to that, man, and all the best on Aquaman 2 and everything else that's on your plate and down the line. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, man. Thanks very much, Akash.
All right. Till then, this is Junkyard Theory, folks.